All right, and with us now is Cuban human rights activist and advocate John Suarez, who joins us from Miami, Florida. A very good day, sir. Is Diaz-Canel someone who's open to change? Are we witnessing a transition of power?
We're not witnessing a transition to power. We're not even witnessing a succession as of yet. Diaz-Canel is a placeholder in a particular position, which is the presidency. And this is not the first time. Between 1959 and 1976, Osvaldo Dorticos was president of Cuba, and that didn't mean much. The country was run by Fidel and Raul Castro then, and Raul Castro will remain now as head of the Communist Party, and he will continue to run Cuba. Mr. Diaz-Canel, if he has other ideas and plans on acting on them, will no longer be president. We've seen that in previous years with other young identified reformers such as Felipe Pérez Roque, Carlos Laje, Roberto Roaina, that when they were identified as having dissenting ideas, they were quickly pushed aside.
So why was
the human rights situation in the country remains...
Sorry, Mr. Suarez, why was he then picked? A facelift. All right, so why was he picked?
A facelift? To have a younger looking figure in the presidency, to be able to give this impression of change without changing. And frankly, I think it has to do with the dynastic succession of the Castro family. Raul Castro is getting on in years. He'll probably die in the next couple of years, as his brother already has. And he has his son, Alejandro Castro, colonel in the Cuban intelligence service, who was the point man in the negotiations between the United States and Cuba and the normalization of relations, not Mr. Diaz-Canel. Raul Castro also has his daughter, Mariela Castro, who's also in the National Assembly and has important positions in the government, and his son-in-law, a general by the name of Rodriguez, is the man who runs the economy in Cuba. So you can already see the structure there of a dynastic succession eventually.
You referenced the economy there, and I want to pick up on that because this new president does have a very difficult balancing act to carry out. The economy desperately needs to be resuscitated in Cuba, and this is happening just as the U.S. is completely stepping away and taking on a more isolationist position. Do you think he's the man to do it?
As I said, this is it's an apparatus. It's not an individual. I think the main crisis economically for Cuba has been the implosion of Venezuela. I think that they're looking with hope to the victory of Manuel López Obrador in Mexico and having an ally there who would provide subsidies from Mexico to Cuba, as Venezuela did over the previous decade and a half. And they obviously also have been reaching out to Russia, China, and other countries to provide them with subsidies and support over the last few years.
Mr. Suarez, in terms of human rights, how impatient are Cubans today with the pace of change?
Well, the human rights situation remains horrible. Women are beaten regularly each Sunday when they try to march peacefully, the ladies in white. Eduardo Cadet Concepcion, the head of the Christian Liberation Movement that had the largest mobilizations of Cubans in the past for change in the Varela Project, where over 30,000 Cubans have signed calling for human rights reforms, risking their jobs and their own safety in doing so, has been imprisoned since November 30th of 2016, was stabbed repeatedly at the end of December of 2017. And 10,000 Cubans just a few weeks ago signed a petition requesting his release. When the Christian Liberation Movement tried to deliver it, a woman by the name of Rosa Maria Rodriguez, she and her colleague were detained and held for 24 hours and the 10,000 signatures seized. But the fact that 10,000 Cubans would sign that petition demanding the release of a prisoner of conscience, Cubans inside of Cuba, indicates that there is a desire for change.
There is a desire for change. Cuban human rights activist John Suarez joining us from Miami, Florida. Thank you very much.